I never thought I'd be standing in the middle of my own living room, watching the two men I've loved most in my life literally tear each other apart while I screamed for them to stop. But there I was, surrounded by shattered glass and the terrifying sound of fists hitting bone. It wasn't just a scuffle, it was a explosion of years of resentment and hidden obsession that turned my quiet Saturday into a crime scene. One of them was the man I thought was my future, and the other was the ghost from my past who refused to stay dead. And in that moment, as the lamp shattered and blood hit the carpet, I realized that I was the prize they were fighting for, yet I felt like the victim of both. Have you ever been stuck between a person who won't let you go and a person who won't let you breathe, realizing too late that you're just a character in a game they're playing against each other? Honestly, tell me, was I wrong for trying to keep the peace, or should I have seen the warning signs before the first punch was even thrown? To really understand how it got to this level of insanity, I have to take you back about 3 years to when I met Mark. Mark was my first real adult relationship, or at least that's what I told myself at the time. He was charming, intense, and had this way of making me feel like the only person in the world, which is intoxicating until you realize that he also wants to be the only person in your world. Our relationship was a roller coaster of extreme highs and suffocating lows. He was possessive, but he masked it as protection. If I went out with friends, he'd call 10 times to make sure I was safe. If I wore a dress he thought was too short, he'd tell me I was too good for the stares I'd get. It took me 2 years to realize that his love was actually a cage, and when I finally broke up with him, he didn't take it well. There were months of accidental run-ins at my favorite coffee shop, late-night texts about how he couldn't live without me, and even a few times where I saw his car parked down the street from my apartment. It was exhausting, but eventually the messages stopped and I thought I was finally free. I remember the night I finally ended it with Mark. It was raining, a cliche, I know, but the atmosphere felt heavy with the weight of my decision. He didn't scream or shout at first. Instead, he just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands, whispering that I'd never find anyone who understood my darkness like he did. It was a terrifying form of psychological warfare that made me doubt my own sanity for months after. I spent nights checking the locks on my doors 3 times, jumpy at every shadow that danced across my bedroom wall. I changed my routine, took different routes to work, and even considered moving cities right then and there. But slowly, the fear began to fade as the silence from his end grew longer. I started to believe that he had finally found someone else to fixate on, someone who didn't know the monster behind the charm. That was the headspace I was in when I finally felt ready to step back into the world, to stop looking over my shoulder and start looking forward. Enter Liam. Liam was the polar opposite of Mark. He was calm, secure, and incredibly supportive of my independence. We met at a gallery opening about a year after my split from Mark, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually breathe in a relationship. Liam knew about my past. I was honest with him about Mark's behavior because I wanted to make sure he understood why I was sometimes a little jumpy or why I valued my space so much. Liam handled it like a champ, promising me that he'd never be that guy. He was a landscape architect, someone who literally spent his days bringing order and beauty to chaos, and I thought that was exactly what he was doing for my life. For 6 months, everything was perfect. We moved in together, we were planning trips, and I truly felt like I had moved on into a healthier chapter of my life. We would spend our Sunday mornings at the local farmer's market, and he'd hold my hand just tightly enough to let me know he was there, but never so tight that I felt trapped. But I didn't realize that while I was building a life with Liam, Mark was watching from the sidelines, stewing in a mixture of jealousy and delusion. He had convinced himself that Liam was just a rebound, a temporary glitch in our epic love story. The tension started building about a month ago when Mark started showing up again. It began with a happy birthday text, even though my birthday was 3 months away. Then he started liking every single one of my Instagram posts within seconds of me hitting publish. It felt like a digital haunting. Liam noticed, of course. He tried to be the bigger person, telling me to just ignore it and block him, which I did. But blocking someone digitally doesn't block them from showing up at your front door. Last Tuesday, I came home to find a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers, which Liam didn't even know yet, on the porch with a note that just said, "I'm still waiting." Liam was furious. He didn't understand why Mark wasn't in jail or why I wasn't calling the police every 5 minutes. I tried to explain that Mark hadn't technically done anything illegal yet, and I didn't want to escalate the drama, but Liam felt like his territory was being invaded. He became hypervigilant, insisting on picking me up from work and questioning me about every notification on my phone. The dinners that used to be filled with laughter were now silent, heavy with the unsaid name of my ex. Liam began asking things like, "Why does he think lilies are your favorite?" And "Did you ever tell him about this place?" It was as if Mark's presence was a virus infecting Liam's logic. I could feel the ghost of Mark's possessiveness starting to manifest in Liam's protectiveness, and the irony was making me sick. I found myself caught in a pincer movement of two different kinds of control, and I was starting to feel like the walls were closing in again. This past Saturday started out so normal. Liam and I were making brunch, laughing about a movie we'd seen the night before, when the doorbell rang. I thought it was the delivery driver with the groceries we'd ordered, so I opened it without looking through the peephole. There stood Mark. He looked disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days, and he was holding a box of old things he claimed were mine, a sweater I hadn't seen in years, a book I thought I'd lost. Before I could even say a word, Liam was behind me. The air in the room shifted instantly. It was like the oxygen had been sucked out. Liam told Mark to leave the box on the porch and get lost, but Mark just stepped forward, looking past Liam straight at me. He said, "I know you're not happy, Sarah. I can see it in your eyes. This guy isn't you. He's a boring architect who treats you like a project, not a woman." Liam lost it. He stepped out onto the porch and pushed Mark back, telling him to never speak to me again. Mark laughed, that cold, mocking laugh I remembered so well, and said, "What are you going to do, little man? You're just a placeholder. You're the guy she uses to feel safe until she craves the fire again." So that's the situation I was in. I was standing in my doorway, watching the man I love and the man I used to love square up like two animals in a cage match. I could see the rage in Liam's eyes, a rage I'd never seen before, and the calculated madness in Mark's. I knew that if I didn't do something, things were going to get physical, but I felt paralyzed. Before I tell you how this turned into a literal bloodbath and the secret Mark revealed that changed everything, I want you to pause and comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have slammed the door and called the police? Or would you have stepped between them to try and de-escalate? Tell me right now, because I need to know if I'm the only one who would have frozen in that moment. The silence after Mark's comment didn't last long. Liam swung first. It wasn't a clean punch. It was a desperate, angry shove that sent Mark stumbling back into the hallway. Mark didn't even seem surprised. In fact, he looked like he had been waiting for it. He lunged back at Liam, and suddenly they were a blur of limbs and shouting. They crashed into the side table, sending my favorite lamp flying and shattering against the hardwood. The sound of the glass breaking was like a starter pistol. I was screaming, begging them to stop, trying to grab Liam's arm, but he was lost in the adrenaline. Mark got Liam in a headlock and slammed him against the wall, shouting about how I'd always be his. The physical strength they were using was terrifying. I saw a side of Liam I never knew existed, a raw, primal aggression that made me back away in fear. Liam managed to break free and landed a solid hook to Mark's jaw, and that's when the blood started. It was everywhere, on the walls, on the rug I'd spent months saving for, and on my hands as I tried to pull them apart. Mark was laughing through the blood, egging Liam on, telling him to hit harder, and asking if this is how you protect your little prize. It was sick. They moved from the hallway into the kitchen, knocking over chairs and sweeping the half-finished brunch off the counter. I watched as the person I shared my bed with turned into a monster right before my eyes, fueled by the provocations of a man who knew exactly which buttons to press. Mark wasn't even trying to win the fight anymore. He was trying to destroy Liam's character. Finally, Mark fell back, gasping for air, his nose clearly broken and his eye already swelling shut. But instead of leaving, he looked up at Liam and spat out the words that broke my heart. He claimed that I had been calling him. He told Liam that I had reached out to him 2 weeks ago, crying about how Liam was too controlling and how I missed the passion we had. He even described a specific night when Liam was away for work, claiming we had met up at our old spot. My heart dropped. It was a complete lie, a masterclass in manipulation. I looked at Liam, expecting him to see through it, but the seed of doubt was already planted. Liam looked at me, then at Mark, then back at me, his chest heaving, his knuckles bruised and bleeding. The fight was over, but the damage was done. Mark scrambled to his feet, gave me one last twisted smile that said, "I won," and limped away before the police, who the neighbors had finally called, arrived. The aftermath was silent and cold. The police took statements, and I had to explain the whole history of Mark's harassment, but Liam wouldn't even look at me. He sat on the sofa, a bag of frozen peas on his hand, staring at the floor. Even though he had fought for me, the doubt Mark had planted was like a poison. He spent the next 3 days going through my phone, my emails, and my call logs, looking for the proof that Mark was lying. He even called my workplace to verify where I was on the night Mark mentioned. He found nothing, of course, because I hadn't done anything, but the trust was gone. He looked at me with suspicion every time I received a text. He started checking the mileage on my car. He became the very person I had run away from in the first place. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I tried to reason with him, telling him that Mark's goal was exactly this, to break us apart by making him doubt me. But Liam just said, "How do I know what's real anymore? You kept him around by not being firm enough. You let this happen." He told me he couldn't be with someone whose past was constantly trying to kill their present. He packed his bags and moved out yesterday, leaving the apartment feeling like a tomb. So now, I'm sitting in an empty apartment with a broken lamp, a stained rug, and a restraining order against a man I haven't seen in years. I lost the man I loved because of the man I escaped, and I'm left wondering if some shadows are just too big to ever truly run away from. I spent all last night cleaning the blood out of the carpet, scrubbing until my fingers were raw, but I can still see the faint outline of where they fell. It feels like a permanent stain on my soul. I've realized that Mark didn't need to win the fight to win the war. He just needed to show me that no matter how far I ran, he could still reach out and touch the things I loved. And Liam, for all his talk of being different, proved that his love was conditional on his own sense of security. Looking back, I realized that the fight wasn't really about me at all. It was about two men trying to prove who had more power, while I was just the casualty in the middle. It's a hard lesson to learn that you can do everything right. You can heal, you can move on, you can be honest, and someone else's obsession can still burn your whole world down. I feel like I'm standing in the ashes of a life I worked so hard to build. For what? To be some trophy in a toxic competition? But I'm choosing to see the silver lining. If Liam's trust in me was that easily broken by a liar's words, maybe he wasn't the rock I thought he was. Maybe he was just another person who wanted to own a version of me that didn't have a past. I'm moving to a new city next month, far away from the galleries and the coffee shops and the memories of both of them. This time, I'm not leaving a forwarding address for anyone. I'm going to find a place where I'm not a prize or a project, just a woman living her life. I've already started packing the boxes, and this time there won't be any forgotten items for anyone to bring back to my door. I am done being the middle ground for men who can't control their own demons. Like this video if you were on my side and think I deserved better than both of them. Subscribe for more stories like this, where I dive into the messy reality of relationships. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section. Did I handle it wrong? Was there any way to save my relationship with Liam, or was it doomed the moment Mark stepped into the picture? Your support means everything to me while I try to rebuild my life from scratch.